Welcome to HFY Sci-Fi Singularity, where humanity never backs down. Subscribe, and let the story begin. Commander Vex Uarthal had led the 3rd Reclamation Fleet through 11 successful campaigns. 11 worlds folded before the might of the Kaloth Dominion. 11 species that learned, quickly, the futility of resistance. Earth was going to be the 12th. That was the plan, anyway. Instead, Vex Uarthal was sitting in his own interrogation chamber, staring across a metal table at a human who was drinking what appeared to be burnt mud out of a dented metal cup, and losing. "You will tell me the designation of your sniper corps," Vex Uarthal said, for the 3rd time, his vocal modulator straining to keep the threat in his voice from sliding into something closer to desperation. Corporal Des Okafor took a slow sip of his coffee, grimaced at the taste like it personally owed him money, and set the cup down. "Man, I keep telling you," Des said. "There isn't one." "Impossible. Do not insult me with lies. In the last 6 days, my forces have suffered 4,312 casualties to precision long-range fire. Your species does not possess the technology for such coordination. This requires a dedicated, trained corps of elite marksmen." Des leaned back in his chair, which creaked in a way that suggested it had opinions about the conversation too. "Okay, first of all, rude. Second of all," he shrugged. "Pick any civilian." Vex Uarthal blinked all 3 of his eyelids in sequence, a gesture his species reserved for moments of profound confusion or structural failure. "Explain." "You heard me. Pick literally any human off the street. Grandma. Teenager. Guy walking his dog. Odds are decent they can put a hole in something a few hundred meters away if they're motivated enough. That's not a corps, Commander. That's Tuesday. It hadn't started this way. 6 days ago, the Kaloth fleet had arrived in Earth's orbit with the casual confidence of a species that had done this 11 times before. The playbook was simple: establish orbital dominance, deploy shock troopers to secure key population centers, broadcast the standard surrender terms, mop up resistance from disorganized civilians who had never faced weapons more advanced than their own crude firearms. The first drop went to a town called Millbrook Falls, population 14,000, chosen for its unremarkable size and lack of any visible military installation. Perfect test case. Sergeant Kreth Veo led the squad down, 12 elite troopers in full energy shielded armor, weapons that could vaporize a city bus. They touched down in the town square at 0600 local time, expecting confusion, panic, maybe some scattered pistol fire that would bounce harmlessly off their shields. At 0601, Kreth Veo took a round through the 1 centimeter gap between his helmet's visor and collar plating from what analysis later determined was approximately 800 meters away. The shooter was a 61-year-old retired postal worker named Harold Finch, who had been sitting on his porch with his morning coffee and a hunting rifle he kept for the deer problem, and who, when questioned by absolutely nobody because he calmly went back inside afterward, would have said he was mostly annoyed the aliens had woken him up early. The remaining 11 troopers scattered for cover. 3 more went down in the next 90 seconds, from 3 different directions, at 3 different ranges. The squad's after-action report, recovered later from the wreckage, used the phrase, impossible triangulation, 4 times and, please send reinforcements, 6 times. By the time the survivors called for extraction, Kreth Veo's squad had lost 8 of 12 troopers to what their sensors insisted was uncoordinated small arms fire from private citizens with no formal military training. Vex Uarthal had watched the footage from orbit and told his tactical officer it had to be a fluke. A local anomaly. Perhaps a hidden military installation disguised as a residential town. Then the 2nd drop happened. And the 3rd. And by day 4, the pattern was undeniable and completely, maddeningly inexplicable. Every single population center the Kaloth forces attempted to secure produced casualties from precision fire, delivered by individuals who, by every available metric, should not have been capable of it. Which was how Vex Uarthal found himself here, in a room, drinking recycled air and staring at a human who found the whole thing hilarious. "I need you to understand," Vex Uarthal said, folding his four-fingered hands together in an approximation of patience he did not feel, "that what you are describing is not possible. A species-wide capability for long-range precision combat, distributed randomly across the general population, with no formal training pipeline, no unified command structure, and no age or gender correlation in the data. This is not how weapons proficiency functions. This is not how any species functions." "Yeah, well." Des spread his hands. "Welcome to Earth. Give me a mechanism. A cause. I will accept any explanation, however strange, if it is coherent." Des actually looked like he was considering being helpful for a second, which Vex Uarthal appreciated right up until the human opened his mouth again. "Okay, so, picture like 300 years of hunting culture. Add in about 100 years of organized shooting sports, dad's basement gun ranges, and youth deer season being basically a school holiday in some states. Now stir in video games where an entire generation spent their formative years practicing target leading and bullet drop compensation for fun, on a controller, for free, starting around age 7. Now add the fact that a frankly upsetting number of us grew up with a rifle in the house the same way your average person grows up with a kitchen knife. Normal, boring, don't think about it too hard. You get all that simmering for a few generations and yeah." He tapped the table. "Grandma can probably hit a soda can at 200 yards. She just doesn't bring it up at book club." Vex Uarthal's analysts, monitoring the conversation from an adjacent chamber, had already begun compiling supporting data, and what they found did not improve morale. Intercepted civilian communications, what the humans called the Internet, revealed an entire subculture dedicated to long-range shooting as recreation. Forums with names like Precision Rifle Network, where users compared notes on wind drift calculations the way other species compared notes on recipes. Video archives of children's birthday parties featuring BB gun target competitions, as casual entertainment, supervised by parents who treated the activity with the same gravity as a game of cornhole. A retired human, in an intercepted audio log, cheerfully informing a neighbor that he'd been doing this since Reagan, a reference the translation matrix flagged as a temporal marker of no less than 40 local years. Lieutenant Sorar Bethiz, Vex Uarthal's senior analyst, delivered the summary with the flat, hollow tone of someone reading their own species' obituary. "Commander. Preliminary estimates suggest that between 18 and 31% of the adult human population possesses sufficient proficiency with ranged weapons to replicate the incidents in Millbrook Falls. This estimate does not include the portion of the population that owns weapons but has not been observed using them, which internal debate suggests could push the figure significantly higher." "That is not a special forces unit," Vex Uarthal said slowly. "That is a third of a species." "Yes, Commander. Distributed. Untrained. For fun. The data supports that conclusion, Commander." Vex Uarthal sat in silence for a long moment, then turned back to the screen where Des was still lounging in his chair, looking deeply unbothered by the fact that he was, technically, a prisoner of war. "I do not believe you," Vex Uarthal announced, striding back into the interrogation chamber with the stiff posture of someone who had decided to salvage his dignity through sheer denial. "I believe this is theater. A performance intended to discourage further engagement through exaggeration. I will prove it." Des raised an eyebrow. "How?" "I am authorizing a controlled demonstration. A single squad will secure a small, undefended settlement, one with no history of resistance, selected at random, with no advance warning given to your forces. If your claim is accurate, we will see it happen in real time. If it is false, you will have wasted my time and I will be considerably less generous in future negotiations." "Sure," Des said. "Knock yourself out. Pick literally anywhere." Vex Uarthal chose a town called Pinevale, population 6,000, flagged by orbital scans as agriculturally focused with no visible defense infrastructure. A squad of 8 troopers under Lieutenant Seth Orn deployed at midday, expecting, at worst, a repeat of Millbrook Falls with better preparation. What they got was worse. The comm logs, replayed later in the command chamber while Des sipped his coffee and occasionally snorted, told the story in fragments. Contact, contact, civilian on the church roof, repeat, elderly civilian on the, wait, that's a bowling trophy, why does she have a static? Multiple positions, I count 6, 7 positions, this is not a defensive posture, this is a command, this looks organized but there's no uniforms, I don't understand, there's a woman in a Girl Scout troop leader vest directing children away from the, she just took a shot, command, the troop leader just. More static, punctuated by weapons fire and what the translation matrix rendered, with visible confusion, as, she said sorry sweetie, mommy's working. Ambush, ambush, we are pinned from 4 directions, I need immediate extraction, there is an elderly male in a folding chair who has not moved from his position in 11 minutes and has hit 3 of my, command, he's just sitting there, he brought a sandwich, why does he have a sandwich? By the end of the 12-minute engagement, Seth Orn's squad had retreated with 2 troopers wounded, 0 civilians captured, and a recovered piece of intercepted local radio chatter in which someone had apparently organized the town's response over what the humans called a group chat, in less time than it took the Kalov squad to disembark their shuttle. Des, watching the footage alongside Vex Uarthal in the command chamber, whistled low. Yeah, that tracks. Pinevale's got a real active bowling league. Very competitive people. You basically walked into a town full of retirees with too much free time and strong opinions about property lines. The Girl Scout leader, Vex Uarthal said, in the tone of a man watching his entire worldview collapse in real time. She was directing children to safety while simultaneously engaging hostile forces. Multitasking. It's a whole thing with moms, you'll find. This is not a military. Nope. This is not even organized. Also nope. Then what? Vex Uarthal said, his voice finally cracking into something that sounded genuinely, existentially exhausted, is it? Des considered the question with the gravity of a man being asked to explain something he'd honestly never had to explain before, because it had simply never occurred to him it needed explaining. Culture, I guess. Weird, sprawling, no central planning culture. We didn't build it on purpose. It just sort of happened. Over a few centuries. Nobody sat down and said, let's make an entire population capable of ruining an invasion. It's just what you get when you mix hunting traditions and video games and a genuine, deeply unfortunate national hobby of shooting things at other things for fun. That is the most terrifying explanation you have given me yet. Yeah, I get that a lot. Vex Uarthal sat down heavily across from Des, the fight visibly draining out of him in a way that 11 previous campaigns had never prepared him for. He had faced armies. He had faced fortified positions and orbital defense platforms and one particularly memorable insectoid hive mind that fought with the coordinated precision of a single vast organism. He had never faced a species where the invasion's greatest threat was, statistically, someone's grandmother. What would it take, he said finally, the words costing him visibly, for the Dominion to withdraw from this system without further losses on either side? Des's smirk softened, just slightly, into something more thoughtful. Honestly? Just leave. We're not looking for a fight. Most of us would rather be doing literally anything else than shooting at spaceships. Believe it or not, Harold from Millbrook Falls would much rather be fishing. Pull your fleet back, cancel the surrender broadcast, and we can call this whole thing a really bad first date. And if we do not? Des shrugged, and there was no smugness in it this time, just a plain, tired honesty. Then it keeps being Tuesday. Every day. For every squad you send down. And eventually you run out of squads before we run out of Tuesdays. Vex Uarthal considered this for a long moment, running the numbers in his head the way he had run numbers for 11 previous campaigns, all of which had ended in victory, all of which had followed a logic he understood. This one didn't follow any logic he recognized. And that, more than the casualties, more than the humiliation, was what finally broke through. "I will relay your terms to the Dominion Council," he said quietly. "I make no promises they will be accepted." "Fair enough." Des raised his coffee cup in something like a toast. "For what it's worth, no hard feelings. You guys just picked a genuinely weird planet to mess with." Vex Uarthal rose from his chair, feeling older than he had at the start of the conversation, though no measurable time had passed to justify it. "I do not believe I will ever understand your species," he admitted. Des grinned, and for the first time, it wasn't sarcastic at all, just warm, and a little proud, in the way people get about the things that make no sense but are somehow, stubbornly, entirely theirs. "Good," he said. "Keeps things fun for us." The fleet withdrew from Earth's orbit 11 days later. The official Dominion report, filed under classification protocols that would keep it sealed for the next 2 centuries, listed the cause of mission failure with a single line that every subsequent commander would read and quietly, privately, hope they never had to verify themselves. Species threat level, unrated. Recommend indefinite non-engagement. Reason, entire population is potentially the sniper.